Hey there, and welcome back to Science Lullaby. I'm so glad you're here tonight. Wherever you are right now, maybe tucked under the covers, maybe lying in that golden half-light that comes just before sleep, maybe with a fan humming softly in the background and the world outside going quiet. I want you to know that you are exactly where you're supposed to be. You made it through the day. You showed up. And now it's time to let that all go just gently, the way you'd set something heavy down on a table and walk away from it. Tonight, we're going to spend some time together in the company of one of the most misunderstood, most ancient, and most scientifically astonishing groups of creatures on this planet. We are going to talk about snakes. Not in a way that will startle you or make your heart race. No, we're going to sink slowly into their world, a world that is hundreds of millions of years old, a world full of quiet intelligence and extraordinary biological secrets, and we're going to let that world carry us gently towards sleep. So settle in, adjust your pillow, take one slow, comfortable breath, and let's begin. Section 1. Ancient Travelers. The origins and evolution of snakes. There is something profound about beginning at the very beginning, and when it comes to snakes, the beginning is a very, very long time ago. Let's start with fact number 1. Snakes have been slithering across this planet for somewhere between 128 and 167 million years. That's not a typo. 167 million years. To put that in some perspective, the earliest ancestors of modern horses appeared only about 55 million years ago. Whales only returned to the sea around 50 million years ago. The lineage of snakes was already ancient, already diverse, already deeply embedded in the ecosystems of the world, long before mammals had figured out what they even wanted to be. Snakes were here before the continents fully separated. They were here when dinosaurs walked the earth. In some versions of the story, they watched the dinosaurs go extinct. The oldest snake fossils we know of come from what is now Europe and the United States, fragmentary teeth and vertebrae that have been dated to the Middle Jurassic period. These are the hushed whispers of animals we can barely reconstruct. They tell us just enough to know that the story was already underway. Fact number 2. For a very long time, scientists couldn't agree on where snakes came from, and the debate is actually still not entirely settled. There are two main competing ideas. The first is that the ancestors of snakes were burrowing lizards, animals that spent their time underground where limbs become a liability rather than an advantage, where a long, sinuous body that can thread through tight tunnels is far more useful than legs. The second idea is that snakes evolved from aquatic ancestors, swimming lizards related to the extinct marine reptiles called mosasaurs. The truth might be somewhere in between, or might involve a burrowing phase that came after an aquatic one. What scientists do agree on is that snakes evolved from lizards. Every snake alive today, from the tiny thread snake of Barbados to the massive reticulated python of Southeast Asia, is a modified lizard. Fact number 3. The key piece of evidence for snake origins came from studying the inner ear of a remarkable fossil called Deinonychia patagonica. This was a roughly 2-meter-long snake from the late Cretaceous period, about 85 million years old, found in what is now Patagonia in Argentina. When scientists used CT scanning technology to examine the bony inner ear of this animal, they found a shape that matches very closely the inner ears of modern burrowing snakes. The inner ear structure of burrowing animals looks different from that of aquatic animals. It's tuned for detecting low-frequency vibrations through the ground rather than pressure waves in water. This strongly suggests that the ancestral snake was a burrower, Snakes, it seems, spent a crucial chapter of their evolution underground in the dark, feeling the earth tremble beneath them. Fact number 4. One of the most important things that happened to snakes during their evolutionary history is that they lost their legs, but they didn't lose them all at once. Fossil evidence tells us a more gradual, surprising story. There was a time when snakes had hind legs, and they kept those hind legs for an extraordinarily long period. A beautifully preserved skull and skeleton of an ancient snake called Najash rionegrina, discovered in northern Patagonia, shows that snakes possessed functional hind limbs during the first 70 million years of their evolution. 70 million years. These weren't just vestigial bumps. They were small but fully formed hind legs, connected to a pelvic girdle, useful for gripping and maneuvering. The ancient legged snakes were, in the words of one researcher, not just a transitional phase on the way to something better. They were successful animals in their own right, thriving for tens of millions of years. Fact number 5. Even more astonishing, there is at least one known fossil snake with 4 legs. In 2015, scientists described a specimen called Tetrapodopus ampilectus, found in Brazilian rock dating to the early Cretaceous period. It had 4 tiny legs, short, stubby, with small clawed feet, along with unmistakably snake-like features, including backward-pointing teeth, belly scales arranged in a single row, and the distinctive vertebral connections seen only in snakes. Whether Tetrapodopus is truly a snake or a snake-like lizard remains a matter of scientific discussion, but its existence tells us something important. The transition from limbed to limbless was not a sudden leap. It was a long, iterative experiment, with nature trying all sorts of combinations before arriving at the sleek, legless form we recognize today.
Fact number 6. The genetic mechanism behind leg loss in snakes involves a family of genes called Hox genes, which act as master regulators of body development. In most vertebrates, including you and me, Hox genes orchestrate where limbs will grow. In snakes, the region of the body where Hox genes would normally signal the development of forelimbs has been enormously expanded to instead produce more of the trunk, more vertebrae, more ribs, more body. The forelimbs disappeared first, most likely because the Hox C6 gene, which is essential for the position and development of forelimbs in other vertebrates, is expressed differently along nearly the entire snake body, effectively turning the whole torso into a kind of neck. The hind limbs persisted longer, governed by a separate regulatory mechanism, before eventually being silenced in most lineages. Fact number 7. Some modern snakes still carry the ghost of their legged past. Pythons and boas retain a pelvic girdle, a vestigial pelvis, and on either side of the cloaca, they have small, claw-like structures called pelvic spurs. These are the remnants of hind limbs. In male pythons and boas, these spurs are actually used during mating, tickling and stimulating the female as part of courtship. Evolution, rather than discarding these leftover bones entirely, repurposed them. What was once a leg became a mating tool. Fact number 8. The most terrifying snake that ever lived died approximately 58 to 60 million years ago. Its name was Titanoboa cerrahonensis, and it was discovered in 2009 in a coal mine in the Cerrejón Formation in Colombia, at over 13 meters in length. That's more than 42 feet, and estimated to have weighed around 1,135 kilograms. Titanoboa was not merely the largest snake in the fossil record, it was the largest known land animal of any kind following the extinction of the non-avian dinosaurs. Scientists estimated its size by comparing its enormous fossilized vertebrae
some over 11 centimeters wide, with the vertebrae of modern relatives. The existence of Titanoboa tells us something important about the relationship between snake size and climate. Titanoboa lived during a period of extreme equatorial warmth, and as an ectotherm it would have needed ambient temperatures hot enough to sustain its extraordinary metabolic needs. The world it lived in was warmer than ours. Fact number 9. Today there are approximately 3,789 known species of snakes, and that number continues to climb as scientists discover new ones. New species are still being described regularly from remote corners of the world. In May 2022, for example, a new burrowing snake called Philotris schornella was discovered in Paraguay, a striking snake with orange, brown, and red coloration. The diversity of snakes is staggering. They range in size from the Barbados thread snake, which is barely 10 centimeters long and can curl on a coin, to the reticulated python, which regularly exceeds 6 meters. They live on every continent except Antarctica, in deserts, rainforests, mountains, grasslands, wetlands, open ocean, and the burrows of other animals. Some spend their entire lives underground. Some spend their entire lives in the sea. Some spend most of their time in the treetops. Fact number 10. Snakes are not present on certain islands and in certain regions where you might expect them. They are absent from Ireland, Iceland, New Zealand, Greenland, Antarctica, and many isolated oceanic islands. St. Patrick, according to Irish legend, famously drove the snakes from Ireland, but the truth is far more geological. Ireland was separated from mainland Britain before snakes could colonize it following the last ice age. The island simply became an island too soon. New Zealand's snake-free status is similarly a matter of geography and timing, rather than any miraculous intervention.
Fact number 11. For most of their evolutionary history, the ancestors of snakes were non-venomous. Venom evolved later, and the conventional division of snakes into venomous and non-venomous is a significant oversimplification. Many snakes once considered harmless, non-venomous colubrids have now been found to possess venom glands and produce biologically active toxins. The boomslang and the twig snake of Africa, for example, were long treated as harmless back-fanged snakes, but their venom is actually extremely dangerous, capable of causing catastrophic, uncontrolled bleeding. The colubrid Carl P. Schmidt, a renowned herpetologist at the Chicago Natural History Museum, died in 1957 from a bite by a young boomslang he had underestimated. Fact number 12. Snakes are, paradoxically, younger than several other groups of reptiles. Crocodilians have been around for roughly 250 million years. Turtles emerged around 230 million years ago. Lizards, the closest relatives of snakes, appeared about 240 million years ago. Snakes, despite being among the most iconic reptiles, are actually relative newcomers in the long sweep of reptile evolution. Yet in the time they have existed, they have diversified into one of the most successful vertebrate lineages on Earth, occupying nearly every terrestrial ecosystem on the planet. Their success is a testament to the extraordinary adaptability of their body plan. Section 2. The architecture of a snake. Anatomy and body plan. Let's pause for a moment and just breathe. If you feel like your mind is drifting a little, that's perfectly fine. You don't need to hold on to every word. Just let them wash over you like water over smooth stone. We're going to talk now about the body of a snake, that long, seemingly simple tube of muscle and scale that is anything but simple when you really look at it. Fact number 13. The scales of a snake are not separate pieces of armor, like tiles on a floor.
They are continuous folds of the same piece of skin, made from the protein keratin, the same substance that forms human fingernails, hair, and the feathers of birds. Snake skin is not slimy. This is one of the most persistent misconceptions about snakes. The scales are dry and smooth, often with a gentle gloss that gives the impression of moisture. But if you were to gently touch the scales of a snake, you would feel something more like firm, dry parchment than anything wet or slick. Fact number 14. Snakes shed their entire outer layer of skin in a process called ecdysis, and they do so multiple times a year, though the frequency varies by species, age, and health. Young snakes growing rapidly may shed every few weeks. Adults may shed several times a year. The process begins with a milky bluish haziness over the snake's eyes. A layer of fluid forms between the old and new skin, causing the transparent eye caps to cloud over. During this period, the snake is temporarily partially blind and may be more defensive. Then, over the course of several days, the snake begins rubbing its face against rough surfaces, a rock, a branch, the edge of a bark piece, until the skin separates at the lips and peels back, coming off in one long inside-out tube that preserves the impression of every scale, including the transparent scale over each eye. Fact number 15. The shed skin of a snake is almost ghostly in its perfection, a complete, translucent negative of the animal, like a transparent glove that retained every wrinkle and ridge. And the reason snakes shed their skin is not merely growth, though that is part of it. Shedding also removes parasites, heals injuries, and is triggered by hormonal changes. A snake preparing to mate may shed shortly before the breeding season. A snake recovering from a wound may shed in a way that assists healing. Fact number 16. The skull of a snake is a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering. Unlike the rigid fused skull of a mammal, a snake's skull is made up of numerous loosely connected bones held together by flexible ligaments rather than rigid joints. This arrangement, called cranial kinesis, allows the various bones of the skull to move independently of one another in multiple directions. A snake's lower jaw is not a single fused bone but two separate bones, the mandibles connected at the front only by an elastic ligament. This means a snake can spread its jaws not just up and down but also laterally, dramatically increasing the size of the opening. Contrary to popular belief, snakes do not actually dislocate their jaws. What they do is far more elegant. They flex at multiple points simultaneously.
Fact number 17. When a snake swallows large prey, it uses a remarkable process called jaw walking. Each side of the lower jaw operates independently, alternating in a ratcheting motion to walk the mouth over the prey item. The recurved, backward-pointing teeth grip the prey and prevent it from slipping back out as the jaw on the other side advances. It is a methodical, patient process, and large snakes may take hours to fully engulf a substantial meal. Throughout this process, here's an extraordinary fact. A snake can still breathe. It does this using a specialized tube called the glottis, an extension of the trachea that can be pushed out sideways from the jaw, essentially creating a biological snorkel that remains functional even when the mouth is completely occupied. Fact number 18. The internal organs of a snake are arranged very differently from those of most other vertebrates. In order to fit inside a long, narrow body, the organs have been stretched, rearranged, and in some cases reduced. Most snakes have only one functional lung, the right lung. The left lung is either greatly reduced or absent entirely. In some species, such as sea snakes and aquatic species, the trachea itself has been extended with respiratory tissue to form a tracheal lung.
The right lung of a large python can be nearly as long as the snake's torso. Fact number 19. A snake's heart, unlike a human heart, is not fixed in place by surrounding tissues in the same way. It is relatively free to move slightly within the body, which is thought to help with swallowing large prey. The heart can shift out of the way as a large bolus of food passes through the body. The hearts of snakes and many other reptiles are also structurally different from mammalian hearts. Rather than being fully four-chambered, the heart of most snakes has two atria and a single ventricle that is incompletely divided, giving it some features of a three-chambered heart. Only certain groups, most notably monitor lizards and crocodilians among reptiles, have hearts that approach the fully four-chambered design of mammals and birds. Fact number 20. The skeleton of a snake can contain an extraordinary number of vertebrae. Humans have 33. Snakes can have anywhere from 100 to over 400 depending on species. Each of those vertebrae is a precisely shaped joint connecting to its neighbors in a way that allows flexion in the horizontal plane while limiting it in the vertical, giving snakes their characteristic sinuous side-to-side undulation. And each vertebrae is articulated with a pair of ribs. This gives large snakes extraordinary musculoskeletal complexity. A large python may have more than 400 vertebrae, each pair of ribs connected to muscles that allow the snake to flatten its body, grip surfaces, and exert tremendous constricting force. Fact number 21. The eyes of a snake are fundamentally different from those of most other vertebrates in one important structural way. They lack eyelids. A snake cannot blink. Instead, each eye is covered by a transparent scale called the brille, or spectacle, a fixed glassy window. This is what gives snakes their famous unblinking, unreadable gaze. The brille is shed along with the rest of the skin during ecdysis. And just before a shed, when fluid accumulates beneath the old spectacle, the eyes take on that opaque, milky appearance that signals the snake is preparing to molt. Fact number 22. Snake vision varies enormously by species. Many species that are active during the day have reasonably good vision, able to detect color and movement, but most snakes see in a form of dichromatic color vision, two color receptors rather than the three possessed by humans, seeing primarily in shades of blue and green. Some species that live underground or are primarily nocturnal have greatly reduced eyes, highly sensitive to light and dark but not capable of resolving detailed images. The slender blind snakes of the family Typhlopidae are technically considered blind, though they retain vestigial eye structures capable of distinguishing light from darkness to help them navigate their subterranean world. Fact number 23. Snakes do not have external ears. There is no ear opening anywhere on a snake's body. This means they cannot hear airborne sound waves in the way that most other vertebrates do. However, this does not mean they are deaf. Snakes sense low-frequency vibrations through their jawbones. The lower jaw, resting against or close to the ground, picks up vibrations transmitted through the earth, the footsteps of a distant predator, the burrowing of a rodent, the movement of another snake. These vibrations are transmitted through the jawbones to the inner ear structures. Additionally, research has demonstrated that snakes can respond to airborne sound frequencies, suggesting they have some capacity for hearing sounds through the skin and skeletal structures, though the precise mechanisms are still being investigated. A snake will feel you walking toward it before it will hear you.
Fact number 24. The rattlesnake's rattle is made of the same protein as human fingernails, keratin. Each segment of the rattle is a hollow, interlocking piece of modified scale from the tip of the tail, added with each shed. A newborn rattlesnake has a single small button at the tip of its tail. not yet a rattle. With each shed, a new segment is added. Since snakes can shed multiple times a year, the number of rattle segments is not a reliable indicator of age. The rattle produces its characteristic buzzing sound when the tail is vibrated at very high frequency, up to 100 times per second in some species, and recent research has revealed something genuinely startling about rattlesnake behavior. They can actually alter the frequency of their rattle as a human or other large animal approaches, switching abruptly to a higher frequency that makes the source appear closer than it really is. This may be a deceptive strategy that encourages a potential threat to stop moving rather than approaching further. Fact number 25. Many snakes have specialized heat-sensitive scales scattered across their lips, particularly pythons and boas, which use these labial pit organs to detect infrared radiation from warm-bodied prey. Even some species that lack obvious pit organs retain molecular machinery for thermal sensing that is more sensitive than was previously appreciated. The more scientists look, the more they find that thermal sensing in snakes is wider and more varied than a simple division between pit vipers and all other snakes would suggest. Section 3. The extraordinary senses. How snakes perceive their world. Let your breath slow a little more now. Feel the weight of your body against whatever is beneath you. We're going to talk about how snakes experience the world, and it is a genuinely beautiful subject, one of those corners of biology that makes you realize just how many different ways there are to be alive, to sense, to navigate the world. Fact number 26. The forked tongue of a snake is not a threat, not a weapon, not a stinger. It is one of the most sophisticated sensory instruments in the natural world. When a snake flicks its tongue, it is sampling the air and nearby surfaces, picking up microscopic chemical particles, scent molecules, pheromones, chemical traces left by prey animals, predators, or potential mates. The tongue carries these particles back into the mouth and deposits them onto two tiny openings in the roof of the mouth, where they enter the Jacobson's organ, also known as the vomeronasal organ, a paired sensory structure that analyzes chemical information and sends signals to the brain. Fact number 27. The Jacobson's organ was first formally described by Danish anatomist Ludvig Levin Jacobson in 1813, though it had been noticed earlier. In snakes, this organ is not merely a supplementary smell detector, it is the primary chemical sense, the dominant way the snake experiences its environment. It is functionally distinct from the regular olfactory system in the nose, which also exists in snakes. The nose handles lighter, airborne odor molecules. The Jacobson's organ handles heavier, non-volatile compounds that the tongue physically brings in. Fact number 28. The fork of the tongue is not decorative, it is functional in a remarkably precise way. Because the two tips of a forked tongue can sample air from two slightly different locations at the same time, a snake can detect chemical gradients, differences in scent concentration between the left tip and the right tip. This allows the snake to determine the direction from which a scent is coming. In effect, a snake smells in 3 dimensions. It can track a scent trail the way a hunting dog might follow a smell, using the difference between the two sides of its tongue, the way a stereo speaker system uses 2 separate channels to create the illusion of spatial sound. Researchers have found that when following a scent trail, a snake simply presses the tongue tips down to the surface and picks up the chemical information lying there. Fact number 29. Snakes also use a different type of tongue flick to sample airborne chemicals. By waving the tongue through the air without touching anything, a snake creates tiny air vortices. Unlike vortices in water that drift away from the source, the vortices created by a snake's tongue linger near the tongue itself, staying in the vicinity long enough to be sampled multiple times.
A single oscillating tongue flick allows the snake to sample roughly 100 times as much air as a simple extension of the tongue. This is a feat of microhydrodynamics that researchers only recently described in detail. Fact number 30. When a male snake is following the scent trail of a female, it is reading an incredibly detailed chemical story written on the ground. The female leaves behind pheromones as she moves, compounds that communicate her species identity, her reproductive state, her health, and potentially other information. Male snakes can follow these trails over long distances with impressive accuracy. The chemical complexity of snake communication through scent is only beginning to be understood, but it is clear that these animals are engaged in sophisticated biochemical conversations that are entirely invisible to us.
Fact number 31. Snakes can recognize themselves through chemical cues. Research published in the journal Behavior demonstrated that garter snakes can distinguish their own chemical signatures from those of other snakes, something that is considered the chemical equivalent of self-recognition. This was long thought to be impossible in animals that rely so heavily on scent rather than vision, and it suggests a level of self-awareness in snakes that challenges old assumptions about reptilian cognition. Fact number 32. The infrared sensing ability of pit vipers, pythons, and boas is one of the most remarkable sensory systems known in the animal kingdom. These snakes can detect thermal radiation, heat, with such extraordinary sensitivity that they can essentially see in the dark, using temperature rather than light. The facial pit organ of a pit viper can detect temperature changes as small as 0.003 degrees Celsius. To put that into perspective, that is sensitivity so fine that it can detect the heat of a small mammal from several meters away. Fact number 33. The infrared sensing ability evolved independently at least 3 separate times in snakes. Pit vipers, rattlesnakes, copperheads, cottonmouths, and their relatives evolved loreal pit organs, paired facial pits, located between the eye and the nostril. Pythons and boas evolved labial pit organs, located along the lips. The physical structures are different. The cellular machinery behind them is similar, involving a temperature-sensitive ion channel protein called TRPA1, but the evolutionary path to that solution was different in each lineage. This is a beautiful example of convergent evolution, nature arriving at similar solutions via different routes. Fact number 34. The TRPA1 channel protein found in snake pit organs is fascinatingly related to the wasabi receptor, a channel found in mammals that responds to chemical irritants like the burning sensation of wasabi or mustard. Evolution repurposed this irritant-sensing channel and converted it into one of the most sensitive heat detectors in the biological world. The rattlesnake version of TRPA1 is the most heat-sensitive vertebrate ion channel yet identified, responding to even the tiniest incremental warming of the pit membrane. Fact number 35. The pit organ works somewhat like a pinhole camera. The opening of the pit acts as an aperture, and the membrane stretched across the interior acts as a sensor surface. Infrared radiation entering from different directions falls on different parts of the membrane, creating a spatial pattern of warmth that the brain can interpret as a crude thermal image. The resolution of this image is actually quite poor. Scientists have used computer modeling to show that what a pit viper sees in infrared is a blurry, low-resolution shape, but combined with the snake's visual system, which processes in the same region of the brain as the infrared input, the combined picture is rich enough to locate and strike prey accurately in total darkness. Fact number 36. Snakes can detect ground vibrations with remarkable sensitivity through their lower jaws. The jaw bones are in contact with or very close to the ground as a snake moves,
and they function as highly sensitive seismic detectors. Ground vibrations are transmitted through the jaw bones to the quadrate bone and then to the inner ear structures. Research has shown that snakes can detect vibrations in a range of approximately 50 to 1000 Hz through this pathway. Importantly, snakes can also detect some airborne sound, low-frequency sound waves that travel through the air and cause vibrations in the skin and underlying tissue. They are not deaf to the air, they are just tuned differently than we are.
Fact number 37. Some snake species have taste buds. This was considered controversial not long ago, since snakes were long believed to have no capacity for taste beyond what the Jacobson's organ provides. But recently, taste buds have been found on the soft tissue inside the mouths of rattlesnakes, and sensory hair-like structures that resemble taste receptors have been found in sea snakes. The full extent of taste perception in snakes remains an active area of research, but the simple story of snakes as creatures with no sense of taste has begun to unravel. The overall picture of snake sensory biology that has emerged from decades of research is one of surprising richness and complexity. A snake navigating its environment is simultaneously processing chemical gradients detected by its tongue and Jacobson's organ, vibrational signals from the ground through its jaw, visual information through its spectacled eyes, and in pit-bearing species, a continuous stream of thermal information from the world around it. These streams of sensory data are integrated in the brain into a composite picture of the environment, one that is utterly unlike how we perceive the world, but no less detailed, no less nuanced. A snake does not experience the world the way you do, but it experiences it fully. Section 4. Venom. Nature's most complex chemistry. And now we arrive at the subject that most people think of first when they think of snakes: venom. That word carries such weight, such a mixture of fear and fascination, and the science of snake venom is, I want you to know, genuinely one of the most extraordinary chapters in all of biology. Not frightening when you truly understand it, astonishing. Fact number 39. Snake venom is not a simple poison. It is an extraordinarily complex chemical cocktail, a mixture of hundreds of proteins, enzymes, peptides, and other molecules that evolved primarily as a tool for subduing and digesting prey. Venom is, at its core, modified saliva. The venom glands of snakes are modified parotid salivary glands, the same type of glands that in mammals produce saliva for digesting food. The transformation of saliva into venom happened gradually across evolutionary time, with increasing specialization and potency. Fact number 40. The proteins in snake venom account for approximately 90 to 95% of its dry weight. Within that protein fraction are hundreds of individual compounds, including enzymes that break down tissue, peptides that disrupt nerve signals, proteins that interfere with blood clotting, and others that cause cell membranes to rupture. No two snake venoms are identical, and within a single species, the composition of venom can vary between individuals based on age, diet, geographic location, and season. The venom of a juvenile southern Pacific rattlesnake, for example, is genuinely different from the venom of an adult of the same species, because the young snake feeds primarily on lizards while the adult shifts to rodents, and the venom has adapted to suit the prey. Fact number 41. Scientists broadly classify snake venoms into three categories: neurotoxic, hemotoxic, and cytotoxic, though this classification is a dramatic oversimplification of a spectrum. Neurotoxic venoms primarily attack the nervous system,
disrupting the signals that nerves send to muscles. Hemotoxic venoms attack the blood and vascular system, either causing uncontrolled clotting or conversely preventing clotting entirely and causing massive hemorrhage. Cytotoxic venoms directly destroy cells and tissue, causing localized necrosis that can result in permanent tissue loss. Most venoms contain elements of more than one category. Fact number 42. Neurotoxic venoms work by interfering with the communication between nerves and muscles at the neuromuscular junction, the point where a nerve signal triggers a muscle to contract. Some neurotoxins, called presynaptic toxins, prevent the nerve from releasing the chemical messenger acetylcholine. Others, called postsynaptic toxins, block the receptors on the muscle cell that would receive that messenger. In both cases, the result is paralysis. The muscles can no longer contract. If the muscles of the diaphragm and chest wall are paralyzed, the victim cannot breathe. This is the mechanism by which black mamba venom, for example, can kill within hours if untreated. The venom of the black mamba contains a mix of powerful neurotoxins along with cardiotoxins that directly stress the heart.
Fact number 43. The black mamba, Dendroaspis polylepis, deserves particular attention among the world's venomous snakes. It is the fastest land snake in the world, capable of reaching speeds of up to 19 kilometers per hour over short distances, though it typically moves at around 11 kilometers per hour when actually fleeing. It is Africa's longest venomous snake, reaching up to 4.5 meters. Its name comes not from the color of its scales, which are actually dark gray or olive brown, but from the inky black color of the inside of its mouth, which it gapes wide as a threat display. Without antivenom, a black mamba bite carries a fatality rate approaching 100%. With prompt antivenom treatment, recovery is possible, but the window is narrow. Fact number 44. Hemotoxic venom works through a different and in some ways even more insidious mechanism. These venoms target the blood clotting system, the extraordinarily complex cascade of reactions that normally causes bleeding to stop when a blood vessel is damaged. Some hemotoxic venoms activate clotting factors inappropriately, causing dangerous clots to form throughout the body's blood vessels in a condition called disseminated intravascular coagulation, a process that simultaneously consumes all the clotting factors, leaving the body unable to stop any bleeding anywhere. Other hemotoxic venoms work by directly destroying red blood cells or breaking down the walls of blood vessels. The result in severe cases is catastrophic internal bleeding, organ failure, and death. Fact number 45. Individual snakes have significant control over how much venom they inject in a single bite. This is not fully understood, but the evidence is clear. Bites by venomous snakes frequently deliver no venom at all. These are called dry bites, or much less venom than the snake is capable of delivering. Studies suggest that somewhere between 20 and 50% of venomous snake bites involve little or no venom injection. This is not an accident. Venom is metabolically expensive to produce, and a snake does not waste it unless it believes it needs to. Defensive bites to large animals that the snake could not possibly eat are more likely to be dry bites than bites to prey. Understanding this is important for emergency medicine, because a verified bite from a venomous snake does not automatically mean severe envenomation has occurred. Fact number 46. Spitting cobras are among the most unnerving snakes on Earth from a purely tactical standpoint. Several species of cobra in Africa and Asia have evolved the ability to project venom not through a bite but by spraying it forcefully through specially modified forward-facing holes in their fangs. The venom is ejected as a fine spray that can travel up to 2.5 meters with remarkable accuracy,
targeted specifically at the eyes of the threat. Contact with the eyes causes immediate severe pain and without treatment can lead to permanent blindness. The spray itself is essentially harmless to intact skin. Scientists studying this behavior have found that spitting cobras can hit their target with extraordinary precision. Adjusting for the movements of the threat, they aim for the moving face of a potential predator with a kind of predictive accuracy. Fact number 47. The fangs of venomous snakes come in several different configurations. The most primitive venomous snakes have rear-fanged dentition. Their venom-conducting grooved teeth are positioned at the back of the upper jaw. This means they must chew their prey to some degree to work venom into the wound, making them less immediately dangerous to large animals. More advanced venomous snakes, the elapids, cobras, mambas, krites, taipans, have front-mounted fixed fangs. These are shorter and more rigid, but positioned at the very front of the upper jaw, where they are immediately deployed in a bite. Vipers have the most specialized fang system of all, long, hollow, hinged fangs that fold against the roof of the mouth when not in use. When the viper opens its mouth, the fangs swing forward to an erect position, and the venom is injected through a hollow channel in the fang like a hypodermic needle. Fact number 48. The gaboon viper of equatorial Africa holds the record for the longest fangs of any snake species, reaching up to 55 millimeters, nearly 6 centimeters. It also produces the highest venom yield of any snake. A single gaboon viper can deliver up to 600 milligrams of venom in a single bite. For comparison, the LD50 of gaboon viper venom in mice is relatively high. The venom is not among the most potent by weight, but the sheer volume delivered makes it extraordinarily dangerous.
Fact number 49. The most potently venomous snake in the world, measured by the median lethal dose in laboratory animals, is the inland taipan of Australia, also known as the fierce snake or the small-scaled snake. A single bite from an inland taipan can deliver enough venom to kill approximately 100 adult humans, or, expressed differently, around 250,000 mice. The LD50 of its venom is the lowest of any known terrestrial snake, yet paradoxically, the inland taipan is considered relatively non-aggressive, inhabits extremely remote areas of Central Australia, and has been responsible for no recorded human fatalities. The eastern brown snake, which is far more common and lives near populated areas, is responsible for the majority of snakebite deaths in Australia. Fact number 50. Some snake species can adjust the composition of their venom in real time, or more precisely, produce venoms with different properties depending on context. In some pit vipers, young snakes produce relatively more neurotoxic venom to quickly immobilize small reptilian prey, while adults produce more hemotoxic venom suited to subduing mammals. Some research suggests individual snakes may also produce somewhat different venom when biting in defense versus when envenomating prey, though this is more contested and less well established. Fact number 51. Snake venom has been one of the most productive sources of pharmaceutically active compounds in medical history. The blood pressure medication captopril, the first drug in an entirely new class of heart medications called ACE inhibitors, which revolutionized the treatment of hypertension and heart failure, was derived from peptides found in the venom of the Brazilian lancehead pit viper, Bothrops jararaca. The drug tirofiban, used to prevent dangerous blood clots in patients with acute coronary syndrome, was derived from the venom of the southeastern pygmy rattlesnake. A group of compounds from mamba venom called mambalgins have shown promise as potent, non-opioid pain relievers. Researchers continue to mine the extraordinary chemical diversity of snake venoms for new drugs. Fact number 52.
Onto venom. The treatment for venomous snake bites is produced through a process that has changed remarkably little since it was first developed in the 1890s by the French scientist Albert Calmette. Horses or other large animals are immunized with small, gradually increasing doses of snake venom. Over time, their immune systems produce antibodies against the venom components. Blood is drawn from the animal. The antibodies are purified and concentrated, and the resulting antivenom is used to neutralize venom in bite victims. The process is inherently species-specific. Antivenom for one snake species may not work against a different species' venom. Researchers are working to develop universal antivenoms that could work against a broader spectrum of venoms, which would be transformative for the parts of the world, India, Sub-Saharan Africa, South and Southeast Asia, where snakebite kills an estimated 94,000 to 140,000 people every year. There is a darker dimension to the global snake venom story that deserves a clear and honest telling. Snakebite is not merely a curiosity of tropical medicine, it is a full-scale global health crisis that has been neglected for far too long, largely because it disproportionately affects poor rural populations who lack political voice. In India alone, an estimated 58,000 people die from snakebite every year, more than in any other country in the world. In sub-Saharan Africa, the combination of limited healthcare infrastructure, poor availability of antivenom, and traditional treatment practices that delay or replace medical care leads to death rates that are far higher than they need to be. The antivenom that exists for many African species is often produced in other countries, has a short shelf life, requires refrigeration that is unavailable in many rural settings, and costs more than a rural family can afford. The tragedy of snakebite mortality is particularly sharp because the deaths are largely preventable. Effective antivenoms exist or could be developed for all medically significant species. The barriers are logistical, economic, and political rather than scientific. Organizations like the WHO, the Wellcome Trust, and an increasing number of private foundations are working to address this, funding new antivenom research, improving distribution networks, developing heat-stable antivenoms that do not require refrigeration, and exploring the possibility of synthetic antivenoms developed through molecular biology rather than animal immunization. One of the most exciting developments in this field is the concept of a broad-spectrum or universal antivenom, a treatment that could neutralize the venoms of many different species rather than just one. This would enormously simplify the medical response to snakebite, particularly in regions where multiple species are present and rapid identification is not always possible. Progress is being made, using techniques from monoclonal antibody technology to synthetic biology. The goal of a universal snake antivenom is not yet achieved, but it is no longer purely theoretical. The study of snake venom is, in this light, not merely an exercise in fascinating biochemistry. It is work that could save tens of thousands of lives each year. The snakes themselves are not the villains of this story. The villains are neglect, poverty, and the persistent tendency of global health systems to prioritize the diseases of wealthy populations over the diseases of poor ones.
Section 5. Feeding, Digestion, and the Art of Fasting. The night is getting quieter. Let your thoughts grow softer, less insistent. We're going to talk now about one of the most remarkable physiological systems in all of vertebrate biology, the way snakes eat, and the way their bodies transform to handle it. Fact number 53. Snakes are the only terrestrial vertebrates that regularly specialize in consuming prey larger than their own heads. This extraordinary capability required equally extraordinary evolutionary modifications to the skull, jaw, musculature, and digestive system, modifications that accumulated over millions of years
and continue to be refined. The largest prey items consumed by snakes are almost unimaginable. Green anacondas have consumed adult capybaras, the world's largest rodent, caimans and deer. Reticulated pythons have consumed adult pigs, deer, sun bears, and in documented cases in Indonesia, adult humans. Fact number 54. The jaws of a snake do not dislocate during swallowing. This is a persistent myth. What actually happens is a complex ballet of bone movements. The mandibles, which are the two halves of the lower jaw, are each connected to the skull via the quadrate bone, an extra bone that acts somewhat like a lever, extending the effective gape. The two mandibles are connected to each other at the chin only by a stretchy ligament, the mental symphysis, which allows them to spread apart laterally. Combined with the highly mobile joints between the upper jaw bones, the result is a skull that can expand dramatically in every direction, essentially surrounding the prey as it is swallowed. Fact number 55. The teeth of a snake are not for chewing, they are for gripping. Most snakes have multiple rows of recurved teeth, teeth that angle backward toward the throat on both the upper and lower jaws. These teeth are not designed to cut or crush, but to prevent prey from escaping backward once it is partially in the mouth. Some snakes have up to 200 teeth arranged in these multiple rows. The teeth are not permanent, they are shed and replaced throughout the snake's life, with new teeth growing continuously to replace old or broken ones. A fang specifically may last only about 10 weeks before being shed and replaced by a backup that was developing behind it all along. Fact number 56. Before the digestive process can even begin, the prey must be dead or incapacitated, and snakes have two primary methods for this. Venomous snakes inject toxins that kill or paralyze prey. Constrictors coil their bodies around prey and exert crushing force. The mechanism of constriction is not actually suffocation, as was long believed. Research published relatively recently showed that snakes do not simply squeeze the lungs until the animal cannot breathe. They compress the cardiovascular system so severely that blood cannot circulate. Death by constriction is effectively circulatory arrest, which occurs much faster than suffocation would. A boa or python does not need to maintain its coil for long. Once the heartbeat of the prey stops, the snake releases and begins the process of swallowing. Fact number 57. Once swallowed, the real transformation begins, and it is extraordinary. In an ambush hunting snake like a Burmese python, the organs of digestion are substantially shrunken during periods of fasting. The stomach, intestine, pancreas, kidneys, and heart are all reduced in size by as much as 40 to 60% during long fasting periods. This is not just unusual, it is almost unique in vertebrate biology. The snake's digestive system essentially mothballs itself between meals, maintaining minimal metabolic activity, conserving energy. Then, when a meal arrives, something remarkable happens. Fact number 58. Within 24 to 48 hours of swallowing a large meal, a fasting python's metabolic rate can increase by 40 to 44 times its resting rate. Not 40%, 40 times. The organs that had shrunk spring back to full functional size, rebuilding their cellular architecture with remarkable speed. The heart muscle itself increases in mass. The small intestine proliferates new cellular projections called microvilli to increase its absorptive surface area. The pancreas dramatically increases enzyme production. Blood flow to the digestive tract surges. The entire body remobilizes toward the single imperative of digestion.
Fact number 59. The stomach acid of a snake is among the most potent in the animal kingdom. With a pH that can drop as low as 1.5, the gastric environment is acidic enough to dissolve bone. Over a period of days to weeks, depending on the size of the prey and the ambient temperature, which influences the metabolic rate of the ectothermic snake. Nearly everything in the swallowed prey is chemically reduced. Bones are dissolved. Fur, feathers, and scales are broken down. The efficiency of snake digestion is extraordinary. Very little waste is produced, because nearly all of the organic material in the prey is extracted and absorbed. What comes out the other end is a compressed pellet of indigestible material. Hair compacted together, perhaps a few keratin fragments, much smaller than you might imagine from the size of the meal that went in. Fact number 60. Some snakes can go without food for extraordinary periods of time. The Arafura snake of Australia's coastal wetlands may eat only once every few years and lay a single egg only once every decade, one of the most infrequent reproductive rates of any vertebrate. Ball pythons and many temperate zone snakes can fast for 6 months or more during winter dormancy. Researchers studying captive snakes have documented individuals surviving without food for over 2 years. During such prolonged fasting, a snake's body does something that sounds alarming but is actually a finely regulated response. It begins to metabolize its own internal tissues as fuel, and the order in which tissues are consumed is specific, with metabolically expensive tissues like muscle being broken down before more critical organs. Fact number 61. A stressed snake that has recently eaten may regurgitate its meal. This is a genuine defense response. A large prey item in the stomach makes the snake heavier and slower, more vulnerable to predation. If the snake encounters a predator soon after eating, ejecting the meal allows it to move more quickly and make a better escape. This is metabolically costly, but potentially life-saving. The regurgitated mass is typically partially digested and generates significant body heat as digestion continues even after rejection. Fact number 62. The kukri snakes of Southeast Asia, named for the curved kukri blade of the Gurkha soldiers that their recurved teeth resemble, were observed in recent years engaging in one of the most unusual feeding behaviors documented in any snake. Multiple individuals of the species Oligodon formosanus were found feeding on the eggs of sea turtles by cutting into the egg and disemboweling it, or on live animals that were too large to swallow whole, by using their specialized teeth to eviscerate the prey. They feed by inserting teeth into the prey and ripping it apart from the inside, essentially disemboweling their meal. This behavior was only described scientifically in 2020, a reminder that even well-studied snakes continue to surprise us. Fact number 63. The brown tree snake of Guam, an invasive species accidentally introduced to the island after World War II, likely as a stowaway in military cargo, developed a uniquely spectacular feeding behavior for reaching bird nests in inaccessible places. This snake was documented in 2020 using lasso locomotion, an entirely new form of snake movement previously unknown to science. It wraps its body around a smooth vertical pole in a lasso-like coil and shimmies upward by tightening and shifting the coil progressively. This discovery fundamentally expanded the known repertoire of snake locomotion, which previously included 4 recognized types: rectilinear, lateral undulation, side winding, and concertina, and now includes this 5th. Fact number 64. Pit vipers have developed a particularly elegant solution to one of the challenges of digesting very large prey. Their venom, in addition to killing or immobilizing the prey, begins the digestive process from the inside. The enzymes in viper venom start breaking down proteins, membranes, and tissues within the body of the prey before it is even swallowed. By the time the meal is in the snake's stomach, the internal tissues are already partially pre-digested, which reduces the time and energy required for complete digestion. Fact number 65. After eating an extraordinarily large meal, a snake such as a python that has consumed a deer or a large mammal will often move to a warm location, a sun-warmed rock, a warm substrate, and remain largely immobile for days or weeks, conserving all available metabolic energy for the enormous task of digestion. The snake is not lazy during this period. It is physiologically committed to one of the most demanding biochemical processes in vertebrate biology, running its metabolism at dozens of times its normal rate to process a meal that may constitute more than half its body mass. The metabolic flexibility of snakes is so extreme that researchers have used it as a model system for understanding broader questions in physiology. How does an organ that has been dormant for months rapidly regenerate its full functional capacity? How does a body that has been operating at near zero metabolic rate spin up to 40 times that rate in the space of a day or two without causing catastrophic physiological disruption? These are not idle questions. The answers have potential relevance for understanding organ preservation for transplantation, for understanding metabolic disorders in humans, and even for understanding how cancer cells are able to shift metabolic states so rapidly. The Burmese python in particular has become a favorite study organism for physiologists interested in extreme metabolic flexibility. When a python breaks its fast and begins digesting a large meal, virtually every organ in the body undergoes rapid dramatic change. The mucosal lining of the small intestine, which had lost most of its cellular projections during fasting, sprouts new projections within 24 hours, multiplying its absorptive surface area many times over. The pancreas, quiet for months, suddenly begins producing digestive enzymes at full industrial scale. The liver increases its metabolic activity. The kidneys rev up to process the byproducts of an enormous protein load. And through it all, the cardiovascular system works to deliver oxygen and nutrients to every organ simultaneously, with the heart working harder than it has since the last meal. This physiological transition from near dormancy to full metabolic sprint in a matter of hours is not just impressive, it is genuinely unique in vertebrate biology. No other vertebrate routinely undergoes changes of this magnitude and reversibility as a normal part of its life history, and the fact that pythons can do this repeatedly, over and over throughout a lifetime of decades, without apparent cumulative damage to their organs, suggests that they have molecular safeguards and repair mechanisms that we are only beginning to understand. Section 6. Reproduction, Social Life, and the Secrets of Snake Families. We're more than halfway through our journey tonight, and you're doing beautifully. If you can feel your breathing slowing, if the thoughts are getting softer and more dreamlike, just let them. Let the words become less like information and more like a gentle current carrying you somewhere quiet. We're going to talk now about how snakes make more snakes, and it turns out to be one of the most surprising chapters in their story. Fact number 66. Approximately 70% of all snake species lay eggs. They are oviparous. The remaining 30% give birth to live young. This live birth strategy comes in two forms. Some snakes are viviparous. The embryos develop within the mother's body, nourished partly through a placenta-like structure. Others are ovoviviparous. The eggs develop internally within the female's body, but without a direct placental connection. The young hatching from their eggs inside the mother and being born as independent young. Live birth is particularly advantageous in cold climates, where eggs might not receive enough warmth to develop successfully in a nest. Fact number 67. Male snakes have not one but two penises. These paired reproductive organs are called hemipenes, literally half penises,
and they are stored inverted inside the tail when not in use. Only one hemipenis is used in any given mating encounter. The male uses whichever side happens to be closer to the female's cloaca. The hemipenes of many species are elaborately sculpted with spines, hooks, and ridges, which may help to maintain contact with the female during mating and potentially influence how much sperm is deposited. Fact number 68. Female snakes can store sperm for extended periods, months, and in some well-documented cases, years. This sperm storage ability means that a female snake can fertilize her eggs long after a mating encounter, choosing the optimal time for reproduction based on environmental conditions, food availability, and her own physiological state. It also creates genetic complexity. A single clutch of eggs can be fertilized by sperm from multiple males if the female has mated with more than one. This is relatively common in wild snake populations and ensures genetic diversity within the offspring.
Fact number 69. In some species of snakes, females are capable of producing offspring entirely without male involvement, a process called parthenogenesis, from the Greek words for virgin birth. This is not merely a captive phenomenon. Research has documented parthenogenesis in wild copperhead and cottonmouth snakes in populations where males were present and available. The parthenogenetic offspring are not exact genetic clones of the mother. They are produced when a polar body, a cell that forms alongside the egg during its development, essentially functions as sperm and fertilizes the egg. The offspring have a full complement of chromosomes, but derive them all from the mother. Fact number 70. The Brahmini blind snake, Indotyphlops brahminus, is unique among snakes in being an entirely parthenogenetic species. There are no males. Every individual is female, and every individual reproduces without sexual reproduction. This species, which resembles a shiny black earthworm and lives in soil and leaf litter, has been introduced to tropical and subtropical regions around the world, partly because any individual can establish a new population independently. It is one of the most widespread snake species on Earth, found on every inhabited continent except Europe and Antarctica. Fact number 71. The mating rituals of many snake species involve competition between males that is primarily non-violent but visually dramatic. In many species, two males competing for access to a female engage in combat that looks superficial, like dancing. They rear up the front portions of their bodies, twist around each other, and attempt to pin the other's head to the ground. The winner is the one who can press the other down. They typically do not bite each other. This is the behavior that has been widely misidentified in nature documentaries as a mating dance or the courtship ritual of a male and female. It is actually two males in direct competition. Fact number 72. In some species that emerge from winter hibernation in large numbers, particularly the red-sided garter snake of Manitoba, Canada, which is perhaps the most studied in this regard, mating occurs in enormous communal aggregations called mating balls. Dozens to hundreds of males may surround a single female in a writhing mass of bodies, each attempting to position his cloaca adjacent to hers. The warmth generated by the mass of bodies may actually benefit the female, who is typically larger and emerges from hibernation with a lower body temperature than the males. Fact number 73. Male garter snakes produce a copulatory plug following mating, a gelatinous material secreted from the cloaca that temporarily blocks the female's cloaca, preventing other males from immediately mating with her. This plug typically persists for only a day or two. It is a form of sperm competition, a strategy to ensure that the deposited sperm has time to reach and fertilize the eggs before being diluted by sperm from a subsequent mating. Fact number 74. Among cobras, the king cobra is unique in being the only snake species in the world that builds a nest for its eggs.
The female constructs a nest from leaves, bamboo, and other plant material, raking it together with her body and coils. Completed nests can be up to 1.2 meters in diameter and are carefully maintained by the female, who remains coiled near or on the nest throughout the incubation period of approximately 70 days. The decomposition of the plant material generates heat that warms the eggs. The female functions as both architect and thermostatic regulator, adjusting her position to maintain the temperature of the nest. Both parents may guard the nest, though the male typically leaves before the eggs hatch.
Fact number 75. Female pythons actively incubate their eggs by coiling around the clutch and generating body heat through a process called thermogenesis. They shiver their muscles rapidly, generating heat that keeps the eggs at the optimal developmental temperature. This is remarkable because pythons are ectotherms, animals that generally rely on external heat sources, yet they can generate significant internal heat during incubation. A brooding Burmese python maintaining a clutch of eggs can elevate her body temperature to several degrees above ambient temperature through this muscular shivering, maintaining the eggs at a stable warm temperature even as the ambient air cools. Fact number 76. Baby snakes are independent from the moment they hatch or are born. There is no parental care after the initial nesting behavior of pythons and king cobras. A newborn venomous snake is just as venomous as an adult, sometimes more so in terms of the concentration of certain toxins per unit of venom. The idea that baby venomous snakes are more dangerous than adults because they can't control their venom is a myth. Baby snakes can and do control their venom delivery, just as adults can. They may be more likely to deliver full injections because they are defensive and less experienced, but the notion of an inability to regulate venom is incorrect. Fact number 77. Snakes were long thought to be exclusively solitary animals. Research has upended this assumption in interesting ways. A study of eastern garter snakes published in the journal Behavioral Ecology and Sociobiology found that these snakes not only actively seek out social interaction, but show clear preferences for specific individuals. They have social preferences, essentially choosing to associate with certain other snakes over others. Whether this constitutes something like friendship in any meaningful sense is philosophically contested, but the evidence for social preferences and non-random social associations is solid. Snakes are not as solitary as was believed. Fact number 78. Snakes can and do engage in play-like behaviors and show individual personalities, though these topics remain relatively understudied. Captive snakes show consistent individual differences in boldness, activity level, and exploration behavior that persist over time, the behavioral signatures of distinct personalities. Some individuals are consistently more exploratory and risk-tolerant, others are consistently more shy and defensive. These individual differences have implications for how snakes navigate their environments, find prey, and respond to threats. Section 7. Records, Diversity, and the Ecological World of Snakes. The world outside is very quiet now, and here, in this quiet, let's take a gentle tour through the astonishing diversity of the snake world, the record holders, the ecological players, the animals that make this group so remarkable. Fact number 79. The longest snake currently living anywhere on Earth is the reticulated python, Malaya python reticulatus, native to Southeast Asia. They regularly exceed 6 meters in length, and the largest reliably measured specimen in recent decades from Borneo measured 7.67 meters under anesthesia and weighed about 137 kilograms. There are credible historical accounts of significantly larger specimens,
including a 1912 record from Sulawesi of a specimen measured at 10 meters, though some researchers consider this measurement imprecise by modern standards. These snakes are excellent swimmers and have colonized numerous small islands throughout their range, occasionally reported far out at sea.
Fact number 80. The heaviest snake in the world is the green anaconda, Eunectes murinus of South America. While the reticulated python can grow longer, the anaconda is far more massive in body. The heaviest reliably recorded anaconda weighed 227 kilograms and measured 8.43 meters in length, with a girth of over a meter. Anacondas are semi-aquatic, spending most of their time in the slow-moving rivers and flooded forests of the Amazon and Orinoco basins. Their eyes and nostrils are positioned on top of the head, allowing them to lie almost entirely submerged while still being able to breathe and see. Females are significantly larger than males. Green anacondas have the most extreme sexual size dimorphism of any terrestrial vertebrate. Fact number 81. The smallest snake in the world is the Barbados thread snake, Tetrachylostoma carli, described scientifically in 2008 from the Caribbean island of Barbados. Adults of this species average just under 10 centimeters in length, small enough to coil comfortably on a United States quarter coin, and are so slender they can thread through the very small holes in soil. The snake feeds on the eggs and larvae of ants and termites. The fact that this species exists at all is remarkable. Mathematically, there is a lower size limit for snakes because below a certain size there are no prey items small enough and energy dense enough to sustain them. The Barbados thread snake is probably very near that limit. Fact number 82. Sea snakes form one of the most successful marine vertebrate lineages in terms of adaptation to aquatic life. There are approximately 70 species of fully marine sea snakes belonging to the family Hydrophidae. They have flattened, paddle-like tails for swimming. Their nostrils are positioned on top of the snout. They can remain submerged for extended periods. Some species can stay underwater for up to 2 hours on a single breath. They have evolved special glands to excrete excess salt from their bodies, allowing them to survive in full-strength seawater without dehydrating. Some species have evolved glands beneath the tongue that desalinate their seawater intake in a process analogous to the salt glands of marine birds. Fact number 83. The flying snakes of Southeast Asia, 5 species in the genus Chrysopelia, are capable of genuine aerial locomotion. They launch themselves from tree branches, flatten their bodies into a concave C-shape that traps air, and undulate in an S-shape as they fall. This produces a controlled glide rather than a simple fall. Flying snakes can travel over 10 meters horizontally in a single glide, and can actually maneuver during the glide, changing direction slightly. Computer modeling has shown that the undulating motion they perform in the air actually stabilizes the glide and produces aerodynamic lift, turning what might seem like a falling snake into something much closer to flight. Fact number 84. The dwarf reed snake of Malaysia adds yet another remarkable behavior to the snake repertoire. When threatened by a predator, it does not flee or rear up. It curls into a loop and cartwheels away, a full-body rolling escape that was discovered by chance when a researcher spotted one crossing a road. This behavior, which was documented in 2020, is the first time cartwheeling has been observed in a snake. It joins a growing list of behaviors that demonstrate that snakes are far more physically creative and behaviorally diverse than their apparently simple body plan might suggest. Fact number 85.
Snakes play crucial ecological roles as both predators and prey. As predators, they regulate populations of rodents, frogs, lizards, birds, and other small animals. Without snakes, many of these prey populations would increase dramatically, with cascading effects on vegetation, crops, and ecosystems. Research in the American Midwest has shown that timber rattlesnake populations in forests significantly reduce the density of mice that carry the black-legged ticks responsible for Lyme disease. Areas with more rattlesnakes have lower rates of Lyme disease infection in humans. This is the kind of indirect, multi-step ecological relationship that makes it impossible to remove a predator from an ecosystem without unintended consequences.
Fact number 86. As prey, snakes are consumed by an enormous array of animals. Birds of prey, particularly raptors like the secretary bird, and various snake eagles, mongooses, honey badgers, wild boars, certain rodents, and other snakes. The king cobra is one of the few snakes that specializes almost entirely in eating other snakes, including other venomous species. The mongoose, made famous in Rudyard Kipling's story of Rikki Tikki Tavi, possesses a mutation in its acetylcholine receptor that makes it resistant to the neurotoxins in cobra venom, giving it a genuine physiological advantage in those encounters. This resistance is a perfect example of evolutionary coevolution, an arms race between predator and prey played out in molecular biology. Fact number 87. Invasive snakes represent one of the most significant conservation challenges in herpetology. The Burmese python in Florida is perhaps the most publicized example. Introduced either by escaped or deliberately released pets beginning in the 1970s and 1980s, the Burmese python has established a breeding population in the Florida Everglades that now numbers in the tens of thousands and possibly more. Studies have documented dramatic declines in populations of raccoons, opossums, and various species of rabbit and deer in areas where pythons are established, declines of 85 to 99% in some cases. The ecosystem effects of this invasion are still being fully understood. Fact number 88. Many snakes are now threatened with extinction due to habitat destruction, persecution, collection for the pet and skin trades, and the effects of climate change on their precise thermal requirements. While snakes are not generally regarded with the same conservation sympathy as large mammals or colorful birds, their ecological importance makes their decline genuinely alarming. The World Conservation Union's Red List includes dozens of snake species as vulnerable, endangered, or critically endangered. Some island species are particularly at risk from introduced predators like rats and cats. Fact number 89. The color patterns of snakes serve several different functions. Cryptic coloration, camouflage, is the most common, allowing snakes to blend into their environments. The leaf-tailed geckos of Madagascar are masters of camouflage, as are many vipers, which often have complex disruptive patterns that make them nearly invisible against leaf litter or bark. Warning coloration exists in coral snakes and other venomous species, bright red, yellow, and black bands that advertise danger to potential predators. Some harmless species mimic the coloration of dangerous ones, benefiting from the reputation of their toxic lookalikes. Fact number 90. The rattlesnake's rattle is not the only acoustic signal produced by snakes. King cobras produce a distinctive low-frequency growl or hiss that has a pitch unusual among snakes, produced by specialized structures in the trachea that resemble simple vocal cords. Several other species produce audible sounds by expelling air through modified tracheal structures or by rubbing scales together in a process called stridulation. The saw-scaled viper of Asia and Africa, one of the most medically significant snakes in the world, produces a loud, sustained rasping sound by rubbing its coils together.
serrated, keel-shaped scales creating friction that generates a loud warning that can carry a surprising distance. The global distribution of snakes tells a story about both geological history and ecological opportunity. Australia has the highest proportion of venomous snake species of any country, more than 100 terrestrial venomous species with another 30 or so venomous marine species in surrounding waters. This concentration of venomous snakes in Australia is not coincidental. Australia separated from the rest of Gondwana millions of years ago and developed its fauna in relative isolation. The elapid snakes, the family that includes cobras, mambas, and taipans, colonized Australia early and diversified explosively in the absence of many of the snake competitors that constrain their diversification elsewhere. In Australia, elapids occupy the ecological niches that vipers fill in Europe, Asia, and the Americas. Australia's snakes are not more dangerous because Australians are unlucky. They are more venomous because evolution, presented with particular ecological conditions, pushed in a particular direction.
The Texas Parks and Wildlife Department tracks snake diversity in the United States, and Texas, with 68 snake species, has more snake species than any other U.S. state. This diversity reflects Texas's geographical position at the convergence of multiple major biogeographical zones: the eastern deciduous forest biome, the Great Plains, the Chihuahuan Desert, the Gulf Coast, and the subtropical Rio Grande Valley, each with its own suite of snake species. Diversity, in snakes as in most groups of organisms, tracks environmental diversity. The ecological services provided by snakes are rarely celebrated, but are genuinely significant. In rice-growing regions of Southeast Asia, snake populations that suppress rodent pest species provide an estimated economic benefit of billions of dollars annually. The loss of snake populations from these agricultural landscapes through persecution, roadkill, habitat loss, and commercial collection correlates with increased rodent damage to crops. In North American forests, rattlesnakes and copperheads are significant regulators of small mammal populations in ways that ripple through the whole ecosystem. The ecological cost of losing snakes, a cost that is largely invisible because ecological baselines shift gradually, and the loss of ecological services is rarely directly attributable, is far greater than most people realize. Section 8. Snakes and Humans. Fear, Reverence, Medicine, and Wonder. We're nearly at the end of our journey tonight, and I want us to finish in the place where snake biology and human experience intersect, because no other group of animals has had a more complex, more emotionally loaded relationship with human beings than snakes. And understanding that relationship is part of understanding what snakes truly are. Fact number 91. About 1/3 of adult humans report a significant fear of snakes, making ophidiophobia one of the most common phobias in the world. This fear has deep evolutionary roots. Research at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden demonstrated that both humans and other primates have a specific neural pathway dedicated to detecting snake-like shapes quickly, even before conscious recognition occurs. Images of snakes activate the amygdala, the brain region associated with fear and threat processing, faster than images of other potentially dangerous objects. A 2001 study found that people could identify a snake hidden among flowers faster than they could identify a flower hidden among snakes. Fact number 92. The evolutionary explanation for snake fear is compelling but incomplete. Some researchers point out that it doesn't fully explain why snakes generate such disproportionate fear compared to other genuinely more dangerous animals. Cars, swimming pools, and electrical outlets kill far more people than snakes do in modern Western societies. The cultural layer of snake fear adds significantly to the biological one.
Throughout history, snakes have been powerful symbols in human storytelling, and not always friendly ones. Fact number 93. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, the serpent in the Garden of Eden has cast a long shadow over Western attitudes toward snakes for thousands of years. The association between snakes and deception, evil, temptation, and the fall from grace is deeply embedded in the cultural bedrock of much of Western civilization. In contrast, many other cultures around the world have viewed snakes in very different ways. In ancient Egypt, the uraeus, a rearing cobra, was worn by pharaohs as a symbol of royal authority and divine protection. The snake goddess Wadjet was a protective deity of Lower Egypt. In Hinduism, the serpent deity Shesha is described as supporting the entire universe on its coils. The cobra Vasuki was wound around the neck of the god Shiva as an adornment and symbol of control over death and time.
Fact number 94. In ancient Greece, snakes were associated with healing and medicine through the god Asclepius, whose staff was entwined with a single serpent, a symbol that endures today as the rod of Asclepius, used by medical organizations around the world. The association between snakes and medicine in Greek thought stemmed partly from the observation that snakes could shed their skin and emerge seemingly renewed, a powerful metaphor for healing and rebirth. The caduceus, the staff with two snakes and wings, originally belonging to Hermes, the messenger god, has been confused with the rod of Asclepius in American medical iconography, and is used by many medical institutions despite its actual associations with commerce and communication rather than healing. Fact number 95. Indigenous cultures across North and South America, Africa, Asia, and the Pacific have developed rich traditions involving snakes as spiritual entities, totems, and symbols of power. The Hopi people of the American Southwest performed the snake dance, a ritual in which participants handled live rattlesnakes as part of a ceremony to bring rain and ensure good harvests. The snakes were subsequently released into the fields to carry prayers to the rain spirits. The feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl was one of the most important deities of the Aztec pantheon, associated with the wind, creation, knowledge, and the morning star. Serpent imagery appears in the earliest known art and ritual objects from cultures around the world, suggesting that the human relationship with snakes is as ancient as human symbolic thought itself. Fact number 96. In the Sumer civilization, dating to approximately 2350 to 2150 BCE, designs featuring two entwined snakes appeared on ceremonial objects. The intertwined snake symbol has remarkable staying power across civilizations separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, appearing in Mesopotamia, Greece, Egypt, India, and pre-Columbian America. Whatever the reason for this convergence, it testifies to the depth of the snake's hold on human imagination. Fact number 97. Bill Haast, known as the Snake Man, conducted one of the most extraordinary self-experiments in the history of human-snake interaction. Beginning in the 1940s, Haast ran the Miami Serpentarium and began injecting himself daily with minute doses of snake venom from some of the world's most venomous species, gradually building up the concentration over decades. He continued this practice for over 60 years. He was bitten by venomous snakes 133 times during his career, including by species that had killed others, and survived all of them. He lived to be 100 years old. His blood, rich in antibodies against a wide range of snake venoms, was used as an emergency treatment in at least 21 snakebite cases, including cases where conventional antivenom was not available. Whether his longevity was related to his venom exposure or simply remarkable genetics is unknown, but his story is one of the most remarkable in the history of herpetology. Fact number 98.
snakebite remains one of the most significant neglected public health crises in the world. The World Health Organization classified snakebite as a priority, neglected tropical disease in 2017. Global estimates suggest that between 1.8 and 2.7 million people are envenomated by snakes each year, with between 81,000 and 138,000 deaths, and at least 400,000 people left with permanent disabilities, amputations, blindness, neurological damage resulting from bites they survived. The burden falls overwhelmingly on rural populations in sub-Saharan Africa, South and Southeast Asia, and Latin America, the world's poorest regions, where agricultural workers and their children are most exposed to venomous snakes and least likely to have rapid access to anti-venom. Fact number 99. The ecological and medical importance of snakes has in recent decades begun to generate a genuine shift in how conservation biologists and public health officials think about these animals. Understanding that snakes suppress rodent populations that carry infectious diseases, that snake venoms are extraordinary sources of pharmaceutical compounds, that the very fear response snakes generate in humans reveals something deep about our shared evolutionary history with these animals. All of this points toward the value of snakes not just as objects of fascination but as genuinely important participants in the living systems that support all life, including our own. Fact number 100. Of the approximately 3,789 known species of snakes alive today, only about 600 are venomous, and of those, fewer than 200 are considered seriously dangerous to human life. The vast majority of snakes you will encounter anywhere in the world are non-venomous, ecologically important, biologically fascinating animals that would much rather escape from you than confront you. A snake that holds its ground is almost always doing so because it feels it has no choice. It is terrified, not aggressive. The ecological and scientific case for appreciating, protecting, and genuinely understanding snakes is overwhelming. They are not villains. They are ancient travelers, superbly adapted survivors, carrying in their bodies the imprint of hundreds of millions of years of evolution, equipped with senses we can barely imagine, capable of biology that still astonishes scientists, and they have been here far, far longer than we have.
The caduceus, the staff with two winged snakes associated with Hermes in Greek mythology, has had a curious career in American medicine. The correct symbol for medicine and healing, used by the World Health Organization and most international medical bodies, is the rod of Asclepius, a single serpent wound around an unwinged staff. The caduceus, with its two snakes and wings, was the symbol of Hermes, the messenger and trickster god, associated with commerce, travelers, and thieves. Its adoption by the United States Army Medical Corps in 1902 was apparently the result of a clerical error, a mistake by a relatively junior official who confused the two symbols. Since then, the caduceus has spread widely through American medical iconography, much to the occasional irritation of medical historians. The fact that an error can become so deeply embedded in institutional symbolism that it is essentially uncorrectable is itself a fascinating piece of cultural anthropology. The staff of Asclepius appears in one of the oldest medical traditions in the world. In the temples of Asclepius in ancient Greece, patients would sleep in special halls called abaton, hoping to receive a healing dream from the god. Live snakes, non-venomous species, likely the Asclepian snake, Zamenis longissimus, which still bears the name of the god, were kept in the temples and were believed to carry the healing power of the deity. Patients who were licked by a snake during their healing sleep were believed to receive special benefit. The connection between snakes and healing in this tradition was direct and literal. It is among the oldest recorded examples of the medicinal use of snake-related material, and it predated the pharmaceutical applications of snake venom by thousands of years. The Hopi snake dance, performed annually by the Snake Clan, involved the handling of live rattlesnakes during a ceremonial dance.
The snakes were treated with prayers and specific ritual preparations both before and during the ceremony, and they were released back into the surrounding countryside at the ceremony's conclusion. Observers from outside the Hopi tradition often focused on the apparent danger of handling live rattlesnakes, but the ritual itself was less about danger than about relationship. The Hopi understood themselves to be in a reciprocal relationship with the snake world, asking the snakes to carry their prayers to the rain spirits in exchange for respectful treatment. This idea of relationship of humans and snakes existing in a web of mutual obligation and meaning is very different from the dominant Western attitude of fear and revulsion, and yet the fear and the reverence are not entirely separate. The power that snakes hold over human imagination, the immediate visceral response that most people have to an encounter with a snake, that response is there for a reason. It is the product of millions of years of evolution in environments where venomous snakes were genuine threats, and that same power, that same capacity to reach deep into our nervous system and produce a strong immediate reaction is what makes snakes such potent symbols in every culture that has encountered them. The snake that terrifies is the same snake that heals, that guards, that symbolizes wisdom, that represents the cycle of death and renewal. It is the same animal viewed from different angles of human experience. To know snakes scientifically is not to lose this power. It is, if anything, to deepen it. When you understand that a snake flicking its tongue is sampling a molecular landscape invisible to your eyes, reading a story of who passed this way and when, you are glimpsing something genuinely extraordinary about the diversity of ways to be conscious and present in the world. When you understand that the pit organ of a rattlesnake can detect a temperature change of 0.003 of a degree Celsius, you are confronting a sensory precision that makes our own best instruments look clumsy. When you understand that the venom that could end a life in minutes is also the source of drugs that save tens of thousands of lives each year, you are seeing the complexity that underlies the simple word danger. Snakes have been on this earth for somewhere between 128 and 167 million years. In all that time, they have found ways to live in every habitat our planet offers, to eat every type of prey available, to reproduce in every climate from the tropics to the edge of the subarctic. They have survived mass extinctions that wiped out the majority of life on Earth. They are, in every meaningful sense of the word, survivors.
And in the quiet moments, in the particular, specific quality of quiet that comes just before sleep, there is something profoundly restful about that fact, about the antiquity of the natural world, about the knowledge that somewhere out there, in marshes and deserts and tropical forests, these ancient animals are going about their lives exactly as they have for 100 million years, completely indifferent to human opinion of them, enduring, persisting, quietly extraordinary. That is where I will leave you tonight, in that thought, in the company of the ancient world. Before we fully say goodbye to this world of ancient travelers, let me offer one last thought that has stayed with me as I've researched these animals. We spend so much of our lives surrounded by things that we created, built environments, digital spaces, manufactured sounds and rhythms, and there is nothing wrong with that. But there is something particular that happens when you spend time thinking about animals like snakes, animals that were here long before our species existed, that will almost certainly still be here long after we are gone, that exist on their own terms, pursuing their own biological imperatives, with no reference to us whatsoever. The snakes in the marshes right now, if there are any near you, are doing what snakes have always done. They are feeling the earth, they are tasting the air, they are following heat signatures through the dark. They have been doing this since before there were humans to be afraid of them, and there is something genuinely comforting about that. The thought that the natural world is so much larger than our anxieties about it,
so much older than our categories of fear and fascination. The snake does not know that we have built entire mythologies around it. It is simply alive, doing what living things do, carrying in its cells the accumulated evolutionary wisdom of 100 million years. That thought of the deep time that the natural world represents, of the extraordinary biological experiments that continue all around us, whether we notice them or not, is one I find genuinely restful. Not because the world is safe, or because nothing is dangerous, or because complexity resolves into simplicity, but because it is so much bigger than us, and has been going on for so much longer than us, and will continue long past our particular worries and preoccupations. We are a small chapter in a very long story, and the snakes are among the elder storytellers. And there we are, 100 facts, 100 glimpses into a world that has been unfolding alongside us for longer than our species has existed. Isn't that something to rest in? The thought of all that time, all that quiet adaptation, all those generations of snakes moving through forests and deserts and ancient seas while the continents themselves were slowly drifting to the positions they hold today. You may be almost asleep now. That's good. That's exactly where you're meant to be. The snakes are out there in their world, following scent trails in the dark, feeling the earth tremble beneath them, warming on sun-touched stones at dawn. And you are here, in yours, safe and warm and drifting toward rest. There is so much to know about this planet we share with them, so much to wonder at, and we have all the nights in the world to explore it together. If this video brought you something tonight, a little quiet, a little wonder, a little of that particular feeling you get when you realize how extraordinary and strange the world actually is, I would so appreciate it if you hit the like button. It helps more people find this channel, and it helps me keep making these videos for you. And if you'd like to be here for the next one, wherever we go next, whatever corner of science we slip quietly into together, please subscribe and ring the notification bell so you won't miss it. Thank you for spending this time with me. Sleep well.